Romans chapter number 5 and verse number 1 today. Therefore, being justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. Therefore, being justified by faith. What does the Bible mean when this term justification comes up? In soteriology, which is what we've been dealing with, the doctrine of salvation, soteriology, there are a number of key words in the matter of redemption. We have the word salvation, we have the word redemption, we have the word or term justification. Now, although all three of these words deal with the same great theological truth concerning the new birth, there is some difference. And then we have the word sanctification, the theological term sanctification, and there we drop into the area of practical sanctification, positional sanctification. I want to deal with the matter of justification. It is interesting that in the King James text, and I absolutely believe the King James text to be without error, Job poses the matter of justification as a question. How should a man be just with God? Now, I think there the definition of justification, the matter of justification, becomes more clear. How should a man be just with God? So how do I define justification? Therefore, being justified by faith. Well, the Bible is the best commentary on the Bible. The King James Bible is always the best commentary on the King James Bible. So the matter of justification deals with a man's relationship with God. How should a man be just with God? Now, this question that is posed by Job has been the long question and the long problem of man through the centuries. How can a man be just with God? Men, all men, have what the theologians call innate knowledge. There are no atheists in a foxhole. There are no atheists when an airplane is going down. We call that innate knowledge. Why would men call upon God? Why would atheists call upon God when faced with death? And if there is no God, why would an atheist take God's name in vain? Why doesn't he curse Barack Obama? Why doesn't he curse Madalyn Murray O'Hara? Why didn't he take Madalyn Murray O'Hara's name in vain? Why do you take God's name in vain if God doesn't exist? Why don't you take your dog, Rover, or Spot, or whatever you name your dog? Why don't you take that name in vain? If God doesn't exist, why would you take his name in vain? So the question through the ages that has puzzled man and dealt with the soul of man and the mind of man is, how can a man be just with God? How should a man, as Job questions in Job 9:2, be just with God? Now, immediately, if this question is going to be asked, then there must be a sense of sin, and there must be a sense that God is. There are two great universal principles that operate in the world today, in the human family, and that is the universal understanding of sin. Now, I recognize that men try to deny sin, they try to explain sin away, they say there is no sin, and they go on and on and on. But if sin is not a reality, then why do we have some elements of society trying to defend what the Bible regards as sin, trying to promote what the Bible regards as the matter of sin? If sin is not a reality, then why does a little child, when they sneak a cookie out of the cookie jar, why do they hide that behind their back when their mother catches them? The sense of sin is a universal innate knowledge. Man knows that he is a sinner. But another universal knowledge is the universal knowledge of God. All men know that God is. Now, they might be an atheist or an agnostic. But like I said a moment ago, you put them in a foxhole and they'll call on God. You put them on a 757 and allow the captain to come over the intercom and say, this plane is going to go down, this plane is destined to go down, and you'll hear atheists call on God. Now, if God doesn't exist, if there's not a universal innate knowledge in mankind that God exists, then why would man universally call on God in the hour when they are faced with death? Well, now, all of this has to flow out of a consciousness that God has put in man in creation that recognizes the existence of the divine creator, that recognizes the existence of God. It's an awful small man and a hopeless man for a man to sit and observe the creative work of God. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth forth his handiwork. It's an awful small man to look at all that God has created in the heavens and in the earth, and to think that man is the center of all that God has created. Anyone that would spend any time at all outside observing the creative work of God must know that there is something bigger than himself. There is something here larger than me. There is a purpose here that is bigger than me. A little child thinks the whole world revolves around them. A little child thinks that history began the day they were born and the world will stop the day they die. But as they grow older, they soon begin to discover how small they are in the total scheme of things. And when they reach middle age and then begin to look at old age, they discover that I have had very little influence and very little effect on the scheme of creation and the whole scope of humanity on planet Earth, and I've had a very, very small impact upon that. Now, man naturally possesses this abstract sense of right and wrong. The Bible deals with man's conscience, and the writers, secular writers, understand the matter of conscience. It is, now somebody said, let your conscience be your guide. That could be a very dangerous thing. Let the scriptures be your guide, because Paul warns that the conscience can be seared with a hot iron. You can change a man's conscience. Just look at the doctors that perform abortions. Abortion is murder. I don't care when, where, how, why. Abortion is the taking of the life of an innocent baby. Now, I understand that there might be a medical time when, for instance, I knew a young lady that contracted cancer, and she was going to have to undergo cancer surgery and chemotherapy and radiation. And she was about 3 months along in her pregnancy, and she had to have the baby taken. Now, the baby would have died, the baby would have been radiated to death, or the mother would have died had the cancer been allowed to progress. Now, those are circumstances that cause you to spend a lot of time thinking and praying about the matter. When I talk about abortion, I'm referring to abortion as a means of birth control. It's not a convenient time for me to have a baby. I'll have the baby murdered, because what I want to do with my life at this point is much more important than trying to raise a baby. And there's no doubt in my mind that abortion as a means of birth control is murder. And yet there are medical doctors that have made millions of dollars, performing abortions as a method and as a means of birth control. And their conscience does not bother them. And the reason their conscience doesn't bother them is their conscience has been seared with a hot iron. Now, be that as it may, all men naturally possess an abstract sense of right and wrong. All men who have not had their consciences seared would be governed and restricted by the matter of conscience. Man also finds himself naturally aligned with the wrongness and aligned against rightness. I made the comment to my pastor some time ago that the natural disposition and the natural course of all institutions, of all theology schools, of all churches, of all governments, of all bodies, is naturally to the left. And the reason it is naturally, that's just the natural direction it goes, is to the left, is because that is the course of least resistance. And that is the course of man's bent toward iniquity. That is the normal and natural course that man goes. That's why many times new schools, theology schools, have to be established. It's my opinion that Harvard, Princeton, and Yale all started to be theology schools. Those institutions are beyond redemption as far as I am concerned. There's no way that they could ever be turned back to the right. A new school, new institutions will have to be established in their place. And sometimes churches get beyond redemption. They get beyond the area of recovery, and a new church plant will have to be established, and a new work will have to be established. Well, the reason for this is simply that man naturally will align himself with wrongness, and man naturally will align himself against righteousness or rightness. And the reason for that is, if he aligns himself with righteousness, he must immediately recognize that my alignment with the righteousness of God is also an alignment with self-condemnation. But if I align myself with unrighteousness, then I can align myself with commendation, not condemnation. Born-again believers are the only people I know of on earth that will immediately confess their own iniquity, their own sin, that will immediately confess their own unrighteousness. And that are those that have been born again by the grace of God. My time has gotten away from me on the broadcast today. The Lord bless you until tomorrow.
Carper. Correspondence may be sent to the Bright Spot Hour, Post Office Box, South Carolina 29602. This is Mark Ferguson thanking you for listening. Be sure to listen next time for the Bright Spot Hour. Same time, same station, same gospel.